Yo, Wyatt begins in like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to Wyatt, and I'm your host, Wyatt O'Brien Evans. Grr, woof, goddammit, woof, woof, woof. My listeners, are you ready? Are you ready to immerse yourself and get swept away into the enticing, the seductive, the heart-pumping, and other kind of thumping, if you catch my drift, world of homoeroticism, but more specifically, gay, SGL, same-gender loving, erotic comic art? Well, it's that sex fantasy universe that legends like Belasco and Tom of Finland have been instrumental in creating. And today's special guest, y'all, is another such legend. He's carved out his very own distinctive space in this homo erotica universe, and we'll explore this gent's remarkable journey and success and what drives him. All of that comes a little later. But hey, after the show, visit my online home, WyattEvans.com. That's WYATTEVANS.com, the go-to destination for LGBTQ news, features, commentary, and entertainment. And WyattEvans.com is visited by more than 100 countries on the regular. Yeah, baby. And at WyattEvans.com, you will find my smoking hot. That's HAWT hot. Nothing Can Tear Us Apart series of novels. And the current installment is titled Frenzy. Yes, Frenzy, which is chock full of masculine romance, intrigue, danger, and the heat of 1,000 suns of erotic passion. Now, before we jump into the show, a program note. My sidekick, Madam Pussy Galore Cockadoodle-Doo, Drag Queen Supreme, is still off. And when you think about it, she's always off. Well, she's promoting her crazy-ass book titled, and y'all get this, dun, 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 Popular Penetration, How to Treat Your Man's Big Old Cucumber in Just the Right Way. Have mercy. Well, tonight, get this, y'all. Tonight, Madam is doing this RSVP book event at Grunts and Snorts. Allegedly is the most popular Bears Club in Podunk, West Virginia. Actually, it's the only such club in the entire state. Anywho, y'all, Grunts and Snorts boasts 250 members. However, only eight have RSVP'd. Now, what the hell does that tell you? Well, Madam desperately wants to do this event, she told me. She desperately wants to do the event because those sweaty, hairy men's make her feel, well, purty. But y'all, that ain't easy to do. Anyhow, good luck to her, if you know what I'm talking about. All right, let's turn to our very special guest. This gent has a distinctive voice, perspective, and brand within the arena of gay SGL erotic comic art. And his enthusiastic fan base is proof of that. This artist's work exudes a particular vibe and a particular vibe and verve, a special kind of flavor and swagger. And his company, Class Comics, is flourishing and on the move, which puts it in a class of its own. OMG, did I just commit a pun? Well, I roll like that. Anyway, I'm loving his art. I refer to it as triple S, sensational, salacious, and downright sensual. And he gives back by mentoring and nurturing other artists working to break into the business of gay SGL erotic comic art. So without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Patrick Fillion. Talk at me. How the hell are ya?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me, Wyatt. It's really fun to be here.
Well, great. Listen, let me tell you, my brother, I'm going to tell everybody how I discovered your work. And check this out. I'm going to set the scene.
Okay.
It was this lazy, hazy day. Now I was kicking back with my little drinky poo in hand, just taking a break from writing a steamy, hot scene for my new novel that's going to drop Valentine's Day 2022 next year. So, yeah, thank you. So I'm like, surfing the net, and I landed on a digital of one of your deliciously delightful characters, Isaiah Shade.
Ooh, Isaiah.
Yes, who's black.
Yeah.
He's black.
Yes, he is.
He's lush as chocolate. Now, Mr. Shade is super muscled and dang so well endowed. He's just my type. And we're going to talk about him lots more in detail a little later. But what I want to say is thank you, Patrick.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, I really appreciated the intro. And I was actually going to ask you how you discovered, my work and stuff. So it's kind of cool to hear the story of how you came across Isaiah and my stuff. So thank you for that.
Thank God I did. Well, listen, Patrick, let me tell the audience that I don't impress easily, but I am really impressed with your work because, number one, it's so detailed and it's strikingly vivid. I mean, the colors are just, it's truly eye candy. And with that, it has a certain energy that jumps inside and grabs you. And Patrick's work is a gourmet treat, actually feast for the eyes and, of course, the loins.
You sure know how to make an artist feel good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
and listen, to top it off, it's substantive because your comics have intriguing, relatable plot lines. And, that's important.
I believe so, too. Yeah, definitely. Anyway, so yes, go on. I mean, go on as if there's more, but I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, listen. Don't break your hand. Pat yourself on the back.
Well, I mean, it's really important to me, I think, to have stories and characters that are relatable. I think if you approach adult comics from simply the sex point of view, I mean, that's well and good. And I think you can still achieve, the whole turning on of your audience. And that's great. But I like to try and turn people on, I guess, beyond just the sexual. And I remember meeting Clive Barker at one point, and he said to me, he says, listen, he says, you've turned us on, you've done that. He says, but he says, if you can break our hearts, then you have us forever.
Right.
And that really stuck with me because I think that we, in fiction or in film or anything that we consume as pop culture, I think we look for relatability. We look for something we can find endearing and that speaks to us. So I try to put that in my characters as much as I can.
Wonderful. And you do that.
Thank you.
Now, let's start your story from the beginning.
Oh, boy.
Yes. Let's travel back through the corridors of time.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure.
Now,
I'm game.
Okay. That sounds good to me. Okay. Give some backstory to folks. Anyway, now you were born in Quebec, Canada in 1973.
That's right. Yeah.
And I read that your parents claim, and I kind of chuckled with this one. Your parents claim that you were born into the world with a pencil already in hand. Tell us about that, please.
Well, if that were really the case, I'm sure my mother might have screamed even more at childbirth. That would probably have hurt a lot. But I think what it really means is that I didn't necessarily play with other toys and stuff when I was a kid. I just wanted to draw. It's all I wanted to do. And I remember being super, super young and just drawing and drawing and drawing and being inquisitive about what I was drawing, always wanting to go beyond just, oh, I drew this, I drew that. I kind of wanted to know how it worked. And I wanted to make sure that when I was drawing it as, I guess, accurately as I could, even as a little kid. So, yeah, definitely, I think that's what, their most vivid memories of me as a child, I think, always involve me doing art.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you know what, Patrick? I always like to ask my guest this question because it actually gives you sort of a window inside the person. So here it is. Patrick, what were you like as a boy? A little nipper? What 3 characteristics or qualities best describe you as a little nipper?
I think I was creative, inquisitive, but also an outsider. And I think because my family moved from Quebec when I was very young to British Columbia, which was strictly English speaking, I didn't know a single word of English when we moved out.
Wow.
And I kind of arrived. I mean, I knew yes and no, maybe that was about it. So we arrive in British Columbia, and it's a whole new world for me. And I'm sort of just plopped into English-speaking school and having to sort of find my way, in that environment. So I think I always felt a little bit like an outsider because of that. And then, of course, there was, I was an effeminate kid, and I was very artistic. And so that immediately sort of, at least in that environment, kind of brands you as a bit of a weirdo, and people don't understand. And, this was also early 80s in a very small northern town in British Columbia. So, you stick out like a bit of a sore thumb. And, but I was just looking for ways to express myself, I guess, but also in a new language that I didn't know, and learning to speak English and to communicate was all part of that. So it just made me feel very much on the outside looking in.
Got it. I can get that. Why did you prefer to illustrate erotic comic art? What led you there?
So, remember I said I was very inquisitive?
Yeah.
A good friend of mine, David Cantero, who's a fellow artist and I work with, asked me a similar question a while ago. And I said to him that I remember being about 6 or 7 and drawing full nudes, but and of adults, but not really knowing where that comes from, because my family was I was raised Catholic, so my family was very proper, and there was no I never saw my parents naked or any of that kind of stuff. So I don't know where all that really comes from, except that it's always kind of been in me. I've always been kind of curious about it. And I think that, as I grew up and became a teenager, and my own questions about my sexuality and sort of, what was going on inside me began to come out and to be maybe more at the forefront of what I was dealing with. I think I just realized I really enjoy human anatomy. I enjoy the complexities of the human body. I enjoyed all that stuff, and I couldn't see what was wrong about depicting it. I just didn't get it. And maybe it was, that I wasn't on the same wavelength as the rest of society or what, I don't know. But to me, it was just, it's nature. It's beautiful. It's the human body is a work of art. And whether you attribute that to God, whether you attribute that to nature, to science, whatever, to me, it's one of the most pure, beautiful forms of art. And I just really liked to express that. Now, I wasn't doing it super openly all the time because I was also aware of the places I was in, and just realized that this wasn't necessarily the time and place to always share that passion and that love. But I think that that's what eventually led me to just saying, I want to do this for a living. I want to show the world that I think there's nothing wrong with this, that it's a beautiful thing, and let's embrace it.
Well, Patrick, you know what I can say to that?
What's that?
Yeah, baby.
I thought you might.
Listen, give me a naked male, nicely put together body anytime.
Right? Exactly. And I think it's so refreshing to hear that, because I think society kind of still sort of views the nude male as a bit taboo in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. And I just shake my head. I try to fight that as much as I can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Now let's push further. Now, you moved to Vancouver after high school, and I believe you had an evolution of sorts that put you firmly on your path as a fully self-aware artist. Could you elaborate on that? Well,
there were a couple of factors, I think, that happened. So at that point, I remember working for Avatar Press, which is a company in the United States that at the time was doing, I guess, what you would call bad girl sort of comics. So with characters like the Lookers, characters like Helena. And, I was sort of learning how to do comics, I guess, on a professional level that way. But it was all, female characters and getting into situations that made me a little uncomfortable, let's say. So I, at one point, sort of thought, I'm working on my own characters on the side. I'd been drawing my own characters for years and years and years. And I was really working up to a point where I'd like to see them out in the world. So I approached the publisher and at Avatar, and I said, would you be interested in doing, some gay comics? And he sort of said, look, respectfully, he says, I'm not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. and he wasn't being rude or anything. I think from his point of view, and he explained afterwards that he simply felt that he would have no clue how to begin promoting and to handle that, subject matter. So, that's fine. I respected that. And I found that a lot of companies had the same attitude. So finally, park that for a moment. I communicate with other artists, including Glenn Hansen, who's a fabulous artist and does very different stuff from what I do, but we totally clicked immediately. And he kind of gave me the kick in the pants I needed to contact Mavity Publishing. At the time was doing Black Inches, Latin Inches, All Man.
Right.
And he said, listen, he says, you love drawing guys. You love, drawing all kinds of guys. He says, send your work to them. He says, don't be afraid, just do it and see where that goes. So it kind of all happened at once. I contacted Mavity. I heard from the publisher there. They were very interested in having me do work for them. And at the same time, I sort of thought, if I can't publish my own comics and characters through existing companies, then why not set my own thing up and do it that way? And that's kind of how it came about.
Oh, my goodness. You mean to tell me those years when I was flipping through Black Inches and Latin Inches, that was your stuff?
Some of it was.
Ooh, yeah. I love it. Yeah. I love it. Now, you don't want to do, I got to go through my old issues if I still have them and try to look for your stuff. Wonderful.
Yeah, no, it was a really great time, and they were so just really welcoming and really receptive, and I had a lot of creative free reign. Let's say it was a lot of fun.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about your artistic process. Patrick, where do you get your ideas for characters? How do you spin your plot lines? That sort of thing.
That's a pretty good question. I think a lot of the plot lines. Well, as of I guess this year, I've been doing this. Creating my own characters, writing my own comics with my partner and husband Fraser. We've had Class Comics for 20 years, so there's a long history behind what I've been doing. So it's sort of like the plots sort of feed themselves now.
Okay.
And because I've created characters that I would like to know, do you know what I mean? Like they're people to me. They're as real to me, as a person in another room, basically. So I think I often say their stories kind of write themselves, like the characters tell me where they want to go. And maybe that sounds like I need to be in a padded room somewhere, but
no, I get you. I understand.
Well, you're a writer too, right?
Right.
So you know what I mean? When a character kind of, you may sort of throw that first, dice, and then their life begins, but then things just kind of evolve naturally. And I think with characters like with Deimos or with Isaiah or people that are that are maybe really exploring emotional aspects to their psyche in the comic page. I think that my ideas basically come from maybe some of my experiences, maybe the experiences that some of my close friends have gone through, maybe a social sort of commentary will kind of permeate my work and sort of get into that as well. So it's multifaceted, I think, definitely.
That's interesting. Okay, are you ready for a super complex question?
Yes, I am. I'm bracing myself.
Okay. in that case, dun dun dun. In that case, dun 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 dun.
I love the music to preface the whole thing. I'm good to go.
Okay, here it is.
Okay.
Now let me get serious. Okay, here we go. Okay, now it's my understanding that you've worked for years in the traditional pen and paper format, drawing on artboard and inking everything by hand. And recently, I believe you've started working digitally.
Yeah.
So what prompted the change, Patrick, and what are some of the differences in those two artistic approaches? And lastly, and so importantly, how has it affected your art?
So around, I think, 2016 or so, I was doing a lot of work with Class Comics where I was writing stories for other artists a lot. And I was doing what I call art directing, if you will. I was, giving notes and managing the artwork that was coming in. And I was sort of feeling as if my own drawing was being put aside a little bit for that particular purpose. And basically, drawing digitally was something that, a lot of artists were undertaking now. And again, one of my art friends, fellow artists, David Cantero, had been drawing traditionally for a long time. And he said, Patrick, I've started drawing digitally and it's going really well. And he says, you should try it because it might really, help you to, essentially draw again. Because, drawing on paper traditionally, you pencil first, and then you ink, and everything just feels like it takes a little bit longer. Digitally, working, I think, is something that you can find these fabulous little tricks, if you will, to sort of just make your art flow more quickly, maybe, without cutting corners. But it's a different technique. It helps you kind of approach things differently. So I'll give you an example. I've basically cut out just the penciling phase. I go directly to inks because I figure if I'm drawing it, why am I drawing it twice? And digitally, because you can see everything you're doing, you can erase as you're going in a very organic kind of way. So it never looks like a worked over drawing. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So digitally working has really helped me to draw again. And I started my Patreon page at that point, and it really felt great to feel like an artist again. I think I had sort of forsaken that a little bit to work more on developing the stories for other people, to work on my characters still, but to illustrate that side of the comics. So I think what it has done is it's permitted me to work faster. I think also to be more maybe adventurous in what I'm doing.
Yes.
Yeah, because I'm not as restricted maybe by the physical page. I can take on scenes that are maybe twice the size of what I would have felt I could do on paper. And those might just be my own perceptions, but the digital I guess approach has really, really changed how I do things in a more efficient and positive way, I think.
So it's sort of like a rejuvenation of sorts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful.
And things like variants. So it's funny because in our gay culture, some guys like hairy guys, some guys like smooth guys. So I like to sort of remove layers, if you will, and give two different examples of pages. So if you prefer smooth guys, there's a smooth version, and it's just a little layer in digital, drawing. You remove that layer and then you have a whole new version of your page. So that's kind of cool to me.
That's incredible. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. A sci-fi vibe or theme flows through your work. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I was always a geek growing up. I always say Captain Janeway is my spiritual animal. The Princess Leia's and all that stuff. They're just the sci-fi influence was really big on me, and even I tend to think that even Marvel Comics is a little sci-fi. I mean, you have people who wield all this power and all this stuff, and that's very out of the ordinary. And Storm of the X-Men is my goddess to this day. She's was a huge inspiration for me. I learned English reading Storm in the comics. I hadn't mentioned that earlier.
Really?
Yeah. Which was interesting because if you read X-Men back in the 80s, Storm had a very kind of grandiose way of speaking, and learning English from her and being bullied by the kids in school, for example. And I would say things, by the goddess, unhand me. You can imagine that. That didn't go over too well.
Look, Patrick, if I were a bully, that would have scared the hell out of me.
I would think so too, but it didn't work that way. Yeah, so I learned very quickly, but I learned English in a very, I guess, refined manner because Storm was very refined that way. But all this to say that sci-fi has always been a huge influence on me because I like the fantastical. I like, the otherworldly. I like to sort of think outside what we can see and what we can touch as human beings. And so sci-fi is very inspiring that way.
Listen, I want to touch Isaiah Shade, but we're going to get into him in just a few minutes. But I had to throw that out. Let me ask you, this. Okay. How long does it take you on average? How long does it take you to complete a title?
I wish I could say I were extremely disciplined. I wish I could say, it takes me, a month and I'm done. I know artists who can do that, and I applaud them and I admire them greatly because I'm a creature of whimsy. I tend to follow my muse, if you will. And I know that that frustrates some of the fans immensely, and I apologize for that. But I also think that if I force myself to work on something that I'm not as into, then it shows. The quality isn't quite, so I follow my muse. But let's say, on average, if I look at a comic like Gay for Slay #2, for example, I was so into that comic and so into that, just that atmosphere. I think I completed it possibly within 2 months, let's say. But you also have to remember that I work with a colorist, Hernan Cabrera, who's fabulous. And so what he'll do is he'll do a first pass on colors, and then he sends it to me, and then I do, I guess, what I call the special effects, the bells and whistles. I kind of do all the power effects and all that stuff. So it's very collaborative on the color side, which is what frees me up, I think, to focus on doing more of the actual panels, because while they're being colored, I can do the next pages. And so it kind of creates a bit of a flow that way. So yeah, it's rough estimate around that.
Well, actually, when you think about it, that's pretty, that's not that long at all. Okay. Patrick, what separates you from other talents in gay SGL erotic comic art, particularly Belasco, who's African American, and Tom of Finland?
I think that one of my big focuses has been to reach out to other artists and to work with other artists in order to create what I affectionately refer to as a mini Marvel Comics, but gay. You know what I mean? Like that's always been sort of what I aspired to. I wanted a community where people who love drawing the type of material I draw and who like writing gay erotic comics could be creative in and could feel safe and appreciated and welcome in that environment. I think artists like Belasco, artists like Tom of Finland are huge inspirations to me, because they're so incredible. And I, growing up, would look at their works and just be, like it was like the deity to me. It was just so beautiful. And I think that, thank God there's people like that who were blazing trails so that I could feel empowered to then add my own little contribution to this world, this world of gay erotic comics.
Cool.
And,
cool. Okay, Patrick, you're a white guy. Listen, you know what? Look, listen, I'm pretty sure you just said to yourself, yeah, I am. I'm looking at myself right now. Okay, look.
Yeah.
Listen, I bring that up because your art, thank God, is racially inclusive with Black characters like Shade in the forefront. So my question is, what life experiences or social interactions that you've had have prompted you or influenced you to do that?
Well, remember I said I felt like an outsider when I was a little kid? So I remember vividly how my family used to move around a lot. So I didn't have friends for very long at the same time, if you will, because I always had to try and make new friends. But I remember, because I was the effeminate, weird French kid, I was always kind of on the fringes. And even as a little kid, growing up where I did, there was a large group of other students that were kind of on the fringes too. And they were usually, the native kids or the East Indian kids. And we always kind of just gravitated towards one another and accepted each other because we weren't feeling accepted elsewhere, I suppose. And I think that, I've always sort of felt that given the kind of stuff I went through in school with the bullying and all the hard stuff, that I always just wanted someone to, I guess, to reach out, to understand, or even if they didn't understand from a point of view of experience, direct experience, to at least say, it hurts, and I hear that, and I can empathize with that. And I guess I just think that you don't necessarily have to be part of like directly part of a minority group to be able to empathize, with them on a human level, maybe.
Right.
And I always have had this feeling, even growing up, that, why can't we get along? Why do we, sort of ostracize those that are different from us? Like, why? And never getting a clear answer. So I think that with Isaiah, it's my love of diversity, my love of all the wonderful stuff that comes from that, like the art, the music, the differences are what make us exciting and beautiful, and yet bring us close together. And I think that with Isaiah, I'm always very careful. I don't want to overstep. Like, I guess what I mean is, because I am aware that I'm white, and I'm writing a Black character who is not my direct experience. So I always want to be respectful of that, and I often will turn to fellow creators who are friends of mine, and who are African American, and I'll say, what do you think of this? Is this, like, am I depicting this okay? Am I being just some ignorant white person? Like, you must tell me, because I do not want to misrepresent or appropriate in any icky kind of way. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
It's really important to me that it be done in a loving and respectful manner.
That is such a thoughtful answer. Thank you for that, because I totally get it. You make a lot of sense.
Thank you. Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to actually say this, because you're probably the first person that has asked me a question like this about Isaiah, and I've really had time to think about it, and it's nice to just be able to express all of that, because I think it's important.
Well, now it's time to get down and nasty.
Ooh, good.
Yes.
Yep, let's talk about it.
Yes. Let's get down and nasty with the character that turned me on to your work, Mr. Isaiah Shade. First of all, I love the name.
Oh, good.
Listen, it rolls off your tongue.
Excellent.
He's luscious from head to toe.
Isn't he, though?
Listen, I wish he were real. I would be right there. And let me tell you what really got my eyes zeroed in. The nips. Everybody, the nips.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They're like those little Twizzler, nibs almost. Like, they're just so chewy and yummy.
Well, you know what? Yeah. We're on the same wavelength, my man. So let's give our listeners the 411 on Isaiah. What's he all about? Tell us about this character of yours.
Okay. So Isaiah ironically started in 2016. I was working on a book called Jacko's Horny Halloween Tales. And Jacko is kind of our jack-o'-lantern character. He comes out every Halloween, and he's a lot of fun. The fans really love him because he kind of always throws out like stories that you might, expect like around Halloween. So they're always creepy, crawly, good fun. And so with Isaiah, Isaiah just sort of happened to be this guy that I drew in this comic called The Devil on the Shelf, which is about a young man who comes home with his wife from a Halloween fair, and she has bought a decoration, and it's this slimy little devil thing, and it's totally creepy as hell. And he hates it. He just hates it. But his wife thinks it's the cutest little thing. So she puts it on the shelf, and he just feels like it's always sort of leering at him and undressing him with its eyes. So anyway, his wife leaves, and and basically this devil comes to life, and it turns out that it's a cursed object, and it's completely infatuated with Isaiah, and it wants to take its Isaiah's soul with him to hell.
Uh-oh.
So which it does for a moment. And then Abby comes along and she says, no, like, this is my fault. I brought this thing in here and it took Isaiah. So take me instead. So there's a trade-off. But when Isaiah comes back, he comes back with certain powers, let's say. He's been to hell and now he can detect demons. He can fight them with his body. He can do all sorts of things. I know it's very guttural. I like it. And so but he also wants to rescue Abby from hell because he thinks listen, I mean, this is completely an unfair, totally bogus situation. I mean, I have to get her out of there. So that's kind of his thing. But along the way, he also discovers the men folk and how he just has, these feelings inside him, and this attraction for other men and as well. And it's kind of, I guess Isaiah's journey is about discovering himself through all of that also. He's very complex, and I think that's what I really like about him.
Yeah, I like more than this. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway. Okay, now, look, you all, Patrick, he's got a lot of great work, but you must check out Isaiah Shade. Now, let me move on to one of your other titles called The Brigade, and I love it's clever. It's Brigade. So that's clever wording. And I believe, Patrick, that Brigade is your longest ongoing series that features characters of various ethnic backgrounds. Yeah, tell us about that.
For a long time, what I have found with Class Comics, because we're not a traditional comic book publisher, so my partner Fraser and I wish we could do more like regular titles per month, let's say, but that's just not our reality. We're a comic company that publishes more like a book publisher, if you will. So I think my frustration with that format came in the form of, we can't have a series go on eternally because maybe people will lose interest after a while, or if I'm writing and drawing it takes me too long, let's say, to draw a full issue and write a full issue to sort of keep that sort of monthly momentum kind of thing happening. And with Brigade, not that Brigade is monthly by any stretch, but with Brigade, I had wanted to work with, again, my good friend David Cantero, who is a fantastic artist. I'd wanted to work with him on a project from scratch, let's say, for a really long time. So I spoke with him and I said, listen, I have this idea for a comic series that would be bigger than anything Class Comics has ever done, because it would be a team book, but it would be ongoing. Now, up till that point, we'd had, let's call them mini series, where they would sort of end, within 3 to 4 issues, maybe 5 being the longest running. So I wanted something ongoing. I wanted something that when people could pick up, they'd know that, okay, more was coming, and there was more and there was more. So working with David is fantastic because he is so fast. He's like a little dervish. He is so fast, and his quality is beautiful. His just artistic sensibility is just so on point, and he gets what I'm writing. He gets where I'm coming from. Mm-hmm. He, I believe, genuinely loves the characters, which is hugely important to me, because over the years, these characters have taken on a life that has become so much more than just what I draw of them, in my view. And so if you don't love the characters, or if you don't at least have a sort of an affectionate curiosity about them, I find it harder to work with certain artists when that happens. But when an artist really digs the characters and really gets them and is excited to work with them, it's fantastic, because then I know that they'll put their best foot forward and I can do the same. And then in turn, I write my stories a little bit sort of with their artistic style in mind. So I want them to have fun. So the Brigade is an ongoing series. It's a group of superheroes that is, composed of a lot of minority characters, which I absolutely love. We have Byron Durand, who's very popular with Class Comics fan, who at this point in time is Naked Justice too. He's become the new Naked Justice, and he leads the group. We have characters like Red Velvet. We have characters like Legend and Bullet, who I love. I love Bullet. He's so much fun to write. And they're basically currently fighting, well, this ultimate kind of psycho madman who essentially thinks, the only way to be is white and straight, and that's it. Anyone else can be put into, little pens, and we'll deal with them harshly. And I kind of, look around with the 4 years we've kind of all emerged from, and just things just, get into your mind, as if you're a writer, if you're a creative person, and sometimes they need expressing. And so the Brigade is a little bit about, it's a lot of social commentary in that respect. But it's also fun and adventure. It's, superhero hijinks and lots of really hot sex. So,
yeah. Yes. Hot sex is very important.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite character? One with whom you have a special connection or affinity?
I have a lot of characters that I love a great deal. So, and that I love working with, let's say. So Isaiah, obviously, yeah. I'm glad you approve. But I think my personal favorite is also rooted in a lot of my own personal demons, ironically. And I think that's Deimos. And I love Deimos because he was instrumental with coming to terms with my Catholic upbringing, if you will. So he's a demon who has decided to renounce hell, and he wants absolution. He wants to be forgiven. And he now basically is halfway there. He has his halo back, but he doesn't have his wings yet. And so he's sort of an agent of heaven, if you will, in this war that is coming, that is being waged by hell. And so it's all about his sort of discovery. And he's very much an anti-hero in a way, because, he's a total... He's unrefined. He's totally unrefined. He's a brutish character, but he's capable of such sweetness at the same time. And I think his discovery of stuff is often accompanied by an "oh shit" kind of moment. That was there all along. And I like that about him. That sort of, we sometimes get that as human beings, right? That epiphany comes along and you're like, oh my God, how did I not realize this about myself, right? And I like to show that in him because I find it's very genuine with that particular character. So he, as a recovering Catholic, let's say, he has greatly helped me with a lot of issues that are, involved in all of that. So yeah. Plus, he's hot as hell.
Well, listen, that's very important.
Is, right? So yeah.
My God, you've got to have the hotness. Thank God for you, Mr. Fillion. Thank God.
But it's really not just me, and that's the thing, because my husband is the unsung kind of partner in this whole thing sometimes too, because Fraser is, I think, very business savvy. He's very business oriented, and we complement each other really well that way, because I'm the creative guy, I'm the whimsical guy, and he's able to understand all of that about me, but he also does a great job of just, keeping everything in check and making sure the books balance and, everything works out at the end. And then there's all the other artists too, and writers, and so it's a whole family deal, I think.
That is really wonderful, because actually you read my mind, Patrick, because I was going to ask you about Fraser. So you answered the question that I was going to ask. You were quick. You're quick.
I'm trying.
All right. Let me ask you this one. why is it so important for Class Comics to publish comics titles, that surprise readers and give them more than they expect?
I love that we are able to surprise. One of my favorite reactions from readers is when they'll write back after buying a comic, reading it, and they'll say, I was just in it to get off, but I couldn't deny like all the other stuff that was in there, like the social commentary, the endearing characters, and that's how I'll keep coming back. That's why I'll keep coming back. So that reaction to me is essentially why I do it. And I like the idea that sex is not dirty. It's not wrong. It's not an awful taboo thing that we should tuck away in a cupboard somewhere and only pull out every so often. To me, it's a beautiful thing. And I've created a world of characters that use sex, if I can quote one of my friends, Johnny, said, as a dialogue. So sex is a dialogue for them. And, and it's so true. I think they use sex to express how they're feeling. Sometimes it's a good thing. Sometimes it's a less good thing, but it's all part of human nature. And I think also it's important to Fraser and I to constantly make the point that the penis is not evil. It's not, but it's not. And it's often in society, it's looked upon as either a colossal joke or a very taboo kind of, oh, no, like, don't look at that. That's a very kind of, private thing and so forth. And I don't know. And I think sometimes as men, we forget that we are just as allowed and entitled to be sensual and beautiful as, the female half of our species. And I think that Class Comics is kind of trying to illustrate, pun intended, I guess, all of that. And that's where I like to surprise the readers, because sometimes maybe it awakens something in them to read one of our books that they might not have realized was there before. And that's pretty cool.
I couldn't have said it any better.
Thank you. I'm glad it's coming out. I was quite nervous at the beginning of the interview, but now we're relaxing a bit. So.
Oh, listen, we're old friends
absolutely.
now, please. That's right. There you go.
Yeah.
All right. You are a mentor for aspiring artists. So what specific advice do you have for them, trying to make their mark, to break into the business?
So a lot of times artists will send me their work and they'll say, what do you think? And I don't pussyfoot around it. I like to just say, look, these are the things I see that need to be worked on. These are the things that you do really well. I think one of the biggest pieces of advice I tend to give is, if you're going to be an artist in the erotic gay genre, know your anatomy. And I know that sounds a little bit basic, but it's something that a lot of people overlook. They think that, oh, well, I can draw a dick. I can do this. Not necessarily. And I say that lovingly, I do. Because arms are important. Legs are important. The head, the face, all that stuff. It's really about knowing how the human body works. You have to be able to not just depict the penis, but you've got to know how the body will move. So when two people are making love, having sex, whether it's raunchy or whether it's loving and tender, you have to capture that language. And if you don't know how hands kind of bend to the form of an arm, let's say, or you're in serious trouble. It's not just cut and dry. So I tell people to really try and remember that. And Fraser does the same thing when people write and they'll send art. We never ever tear down. I am a firm believer in that. Never tear down a creative person. Ever.
Yes.
But
yes.
If they are open to guidance, then give it freely. And that's kind of how we approach things. And the other thing I think is it's important for people to be self-aware. we've received, excuse me, we've received submissions sometimes that you can see the potential, but you can also tell that they need a little more time in the oven to bake, let's say. But certain personality types are not open to that kind of remark, and others are. So it's really finding a way to put that across in a caring kind of manner, because like I said, you want to guide, you don't want to tear down ever. Yeah.
Wonderful. That's good advice. It's nurturing, and it comes from a place of love, and that's really very important. Well, what is on tap for the rest of 2021 for Class Comix? What do you have going on?
Well, we always have stuff in our orbit. It's Fraser and I laugh about this a lot, because sometimes books just drop in our laps and they're done. And so we've just released Tug Harder, The Chronosexual by Butch McLogic, who's a fantastic artist. Porky 5 came out, who was written and drawn by Logan. And we didn't expect those books. That's the crazy thing. They kind of just materialized. Here they are, guys. And, are you ready to publish them? And so we're always kind of excited about what, is, in our cards. But we do have stuff that is planned. And I personally, right now, I don't know if you've noticed, but when I do Isaiah Shade's Gay for Slay, for example, I always have kind of an in-between chapter, which takes place in Deimos's narrative. So,
yes.
So
right.
after I last year released Gay for Slay #2, and now I'm just finishing up Captivity, which is the chapter that is sort of the interlude before Gay for Slay 3. But you know what that means? That means I'm starting Gay for Slay 3 this year.
Yeah.
So more Isaiah Shade, definitely. I'm super excited, and I sometimes have to remember that he's not my only character, and I do have to focus. I know, right? I know, but it's true, and the fans are always clamoring for other things too. So there's Isaiah Shade, Gay for Slay 3. Then I'm also working on Zon #4, which I've had a tough time with that book. It sort of got started in 2016, 17, and then I kind of just said, oh, I need a break from this. And 4 years later, I'm coming back to it, and it's like, okay, I guess I'll try this again. So, but it's timing. It's what I was talking about earlier, about following that muse. And I'm feeling that muse now. So I think I can get back to it. And class-wise, we just, we've got a ton of other books coming out. We just, some digital titles, some print stuff, more Exodus from David Cantero, which is also really popular. It's a great sci-fi fantasy series, and more Brigade. Brigade #8 actually drops in a couple of weeks, and it's a pretty heavy-duty issue. I think it's going to really shift things in the story, and it's sort of building up to that final climax. So I'm very excited about it. So yeah, we've a lot of stuff going on, and we're always looking. If people are wanting to self-publish or to publish, through us and have a creator-owned title, we're always accepting submissions and are always happy to look at what people do.
Well, man, you have a lot on your dance card, and I have to tell you, really, really do. And I have to tell everybody that I love climaxes.
I do too, which is why I'm so glad to finally get to the one in the Brigade, although there's been plenty of mini climaxes prior to this, so we're good.
Okay, Patrick, how do us grown folk connect and contact you? Give us all of your social media, Facebook, Twitter,
right. So
etc.
I made myself a little list so I wouldn't forget any of them. Yes. So if people want to connect with me on a more direct level, I'm on Patreon under Patreon/Patrick Fillion. I'm on Facebook under Art of Patrick Fillion. And Class Comix is also on Facebook under Class Comix. I'm on Twitter under the handle Naked Justice, and Class Comix is also on Twitter as Class Comix. And of course, you can go to classcomics.com if you want to see all the books we've put out, get a sense of what's currently available in our catalog and what's coming up. So that's pretty much that.
Wonderful. Well, Mr. Patrick Fillion of Class Comics, thank you so much for visiting Wyatt. I really appreciate it. And you have to come. You have to come back.
I'd love to. It's been so much fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. My pleasure. So there you have it. You can find the official Wyatt podcast page on WyattEvans.com. And the official hashtag is Wyatt on air. And if you want to be a guest on Wyatt, or you just have comments, you can email me at wyattonair@gmail.com. And you can follow me, Wyatt O'Brien Evans, your host, on Facebook.com/Wyatt O'Brien Evans, on Twitter at Mr. Woe, MisterWoe, and on Instagram and Mr. Wyatt O, that's MrWyatto. And be sure to check out my Nothing Can Tear Us Apart series of novels, the latest being Frenzy, and its predecessor, Rage, at WyattEvans.com. So until next time, woof, goddammit, woof, 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 woof.